Hi guys, you're very welcome back to the vlog. I hope you're keeping well. Today I'm going to be talking to you about not just one book, two books, but one author. And his name is Ragnar Jonasson, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And he's an Icelandic author. Now, in truth, I didn't expect to be reading Icelandic authors. I happened to pick up this book, The Mist, probably because, was I judging the book by the cover? No, I wasn't. It was just, I was browsing in a bookshop and I thought, yeah, I might like that. And I bought it, and I didn't regret that decision, truth be told. And then following my reading of this particular book, I headed off and I bought probably 4 or 5 different Ragnar Jonasson books in my local bookshop, and I was very happy to do so. And these are just the 2 that I've read. I've got other ones that I don't tend to tear into an author and maybe read 5 or 6 of their books in a row, a binge read as it were. I tend to kind of, let's say, step back a while. Even if the book was excellent or the writing was excellent, I tend to step back and anticipate the enjoyment of reading a book by that particular author in the future. So now, what will I start with? Well, the first off, I will say, Snowblind was Ragnar's first book. And you can see an evolving writer. This was written in 2010, and I think he wrote a book annually, if not maybe 2 books in a year. And this book was written in 2017, or at least they were published 2010, 2017. But I can see quite a development in the actual writing and in the very laconic nature of this particular book. Every word is weighed so carefully. Both are detective books, as it were, murder stories, mystery stories. There's an element of I wouldn't say horror, but intrigue. And the word is eluding me at the moment, but very, very engaging books in general. So look, what will I start with? Well, look, I'll start with The Mist, seeing as I read that the first time out. I picked up The Mist and I started reading it. Very easy book to read. It is about 300 pages, but it doesn't feel 300 pages. You tend to kind of rip through it. 2 stories going on here, at least 2 different sections of the book. The first one that we meet is Hilda Herman's daughter, and I hope I pronounced her name right as well. She's a detective. She's had some personal issues, and these personal issues are revealed as time moves on. She's investigating the disappearance of a young girl, and yet has this young girl disappeared? She seems to have gone away of her own volition, and so therefore there's a kind of a mystery as to whether there is a murder or a disappearance or there isn't. And yet that story really is completely only secondary. It's almost like a relief for the other story, a kind of a break, or so that we get a bit of time out to digest what we've read in what I would consider the main part of the story. Now, it's about 9 months since I read this particular book, and when I think back on it, it's the story, again, Ragnar Jonasson, a lot of obviously his books are based in Iceland, but not just in, let's say, what I would consider Iceland extremely rural anyway, but we're not talking about Reykjavik here. We're talking about extreme areas. The book I'll look in a while, Snowblind, that's based right at the very northern tip of Iceland. This book is based in the uplands, the highland regions of Iceland. So much so, these are regions now that if you actually visit there, when you hire a car, if you hire a car after maybe September and before March, you will not be allowed to take that car up to those particular areas. So rural is it. So much hassle has there been with cars having to be abandoned and then not being able to retrieved. So, you know, there's like the regular section of Iceland, the southern section, maybe part of the western section and southeastern section, and then there's the northern and central area, which is the highland area of Iceland. Anyway, getting back to it, this is based in the western highlands, the eastern highlands, in a very, very rural area. So much so there are only 2 houses on this particular road, and it's coming up to Christmas. Now, 2 people live in the particular farm, as we call it. Not that you could farm it for most of the year, I'm sure. And they're called Erla and Einar. And they're living in the farm. They're a married couple. And isolation is a big theme in a lot of his books, as you can imagine. Also, weather is a very, very big theme. And it's coming up to Christmas in this particular book, and a blizzard is blowing, and so the weather changes. And though it's called The Mist, I'm not quite sure why he called it The Mist. It certainly was snow. Maybe it's the vagueness of the whole story. Maybe it's the vagueness of the whole, you have to try and slowly make things out in a mist. Again, this story reveals itself bit by bit, and every single word and sentence is extremely important. I don't want to give anything away here today, and so therefore I'm going to have to be ultra careful about what I say, because I could, and I wouldn't like to, because the whole idea of this is that we are drip fed bit by bit extra information, but we are kept hanging on. Mystery and intrigue causes us to turn that page. This is a real page turner. This is a real book you want to get through. You want to get to the end and find out the story. What's it all about? And there are lots of questions as you're going through. A man calls at a house. It's just coming up to Christmas. Why is he there? His name is Leo. He has arrived. What's his story? And the skill that the author has is that he leaves so much hanging, and yet is so much in control of our thoughts and the story and the plot line, that you're in awe of that, and you're really going, wow, this is superb. And bit by bit, the story is revealed. But, you know, why would somebody be up there on that particular time of the year? How did they arrive there? Were they lost? And yet so many questions could have been asked if you were there. What are you doing here? Why are you here? What's going on? But what this man portrays isn't really what he's about or they're about, and everybody here has loads to hide. That's all I will say. I don't want to say any more. It certainly is a kind of he, as I said, he controls our mind. He throws us one way, then we find out we've been fooled by the author, and we're over here. Then we find out we've been fooled again. So there's double, treble, quadruple intrigue as we go all the way to the end of this book. And so this was a book that caused me to go back out and say, I've got to buy a whole load more of Ragnar Jonasson, got to get that right, Jonasson's books, because I don't want anybody else reading them. I want to have them when I want to read them. So this again comes highly recommended, and as an author I would highly recommend him. If you're into detective books, if you're into murder mysteries or missing mysteries or whatever it is, if you're into intrigue and if you want a page turner, The Mist by Ragnar Jonasson is certainly a book that you should buy. Anyway, having read that, and really enjoyed it and felt 300 pages really wasn't 300 pages at all, as I've said. I actually haven't checked out what these books got on, but I will put it up there, what The Mist got on Goodreads, and let you know. And then afterwards I'll let you know what it got on Snowblind. I'll let you know just there. Something I didn't actually check out before I decided to do the review. I then went back and I picked out this particular book. It's the first book, as I've said already, that he wrote, and you can see differences. You're expecting it to be of the same standard of writing that you got in The Mist, but it's not. And that's kind of unfair to Ragnar Jonasson, in the sense that this is a very, very good book as a standalone book. I would certainly read this book first, because you'll say to yourself, yeah, that's good. Whereas when I went and I read The Mist first, I'm expecting this to be on the same level, and it's probably not. It's like anybody. If you're starting to do something for the first time, play golf, 7, 8, 10 years later, you're going to be hopefully, it didn't happen to me, but hopefully an awful lot better. And so this particular book, again, quite an intriguing story. It takes place in a place right at the very tip of northern Iceland, and I hope I'm saying this properly, Siglfjordur. Yeah, I probably just butchered it, but either way, it's a remote, isolated town, or let's say village, really large village, small town. You need to go through a tunnel to get there. The protagonist is a guy called Ari Thor Aronson, and he is living in Reykjavik with his partner. His partner is an ambitious lady. They have plans of possibly getting married. She wants to remain in Reykjavik. He had been away to study as a priest, but unfortunately it didn't quite work out. And later in Siglfjordur, he is nicknamed the Reverend when this bit of information gets out. Any little bit of information in a small rural area, well, everybody gets to know about it, and so everybody seems to be living in everybody else's ear, and anything that happens, well, or anything that is said, will be spread throughout the community very, very quickly. He decides, after doing some study, I think he was involved in forensics, etc., which he really enjoyed, that he might decide to become a police officer. And so he applies to join the Icelandic police force, and he is assigned to this extremely northern rural outpost. Then he has to make a decision what's going to happen. So his girlfriend stays in the flat and he heads north. He heads north maybe 3 or 4 weeks before Christmas. And again, there's this theme within the actual books, both books, about, and it's mentioned in The Mist as well, that a tradition in Iceland is, coming up to Christmas time, that you would give somebody a book, and on Christmas Eve, which is the main day in Christmas in Iceland, that they would then sit down and they would read their new book that they got as a present. This is mentioned again in this particular story, as I said. And he heads north. He finds it very, very claustrophobic. He finds the weather up there far worse than it was in Reykjavik. There's actually snow there at Christmas time. Now, excuse my ignorance, but I would have thought that Reykjavik would have had snow at Christmas time, but apparently not. He's not happy about that. He feels shut away. You have to go through a tunnel to get there, and as the book progresses, the weather gets worse and worse, and they're using 4x4s and snow plows to try and get around. A lot of it is done by walking, and also their link with civilization, the main road, etc., is shut off because of avalanching onto that particular road. So this background really doesn't suit Ari whatsoever. In a small area, rural area, everybody tends to know everybody else, but here lots of people have different secrets. and I suppose the element of mystery coming in. Lots of them are blow-ins, and Ari meets with this girl Ugla, and she tries to get him involved in the local theatre because quite a lot of the town are involved there. There is a substantial theatre in relative terms in this particular area, and so therefore some people are involved in maybe say on stage acting, others directing, some with costumes, those who are handy with they may be carpenters in their real life are helping out with the set. Lots of people in the town or village have a part within, and they're very, very fortunate that within their community there's a guy called Hrolfr, and he is a writer of fame. He wrote an international bestseller, a very good book. Now, he only seemed to write the one book, but he seemed to feed off of that, and it became famous all over the world. And then he moved a lot of, obviously, Iceland and Denmark, because Denmark controlled and owned Iceland for quite a substantial length of time. Lots of them, and in Iceland, for instance, Danish and English are taught in the schools. The Faroe Islands, which is halfway between Denmark and Iceland, again is owned by Denmark, and Denmark also controls Greenland as well. So Iceland got its independence from Denmark, so there's a fierce link there, and some of the characters have come back from Denmark, and this is important in this particular story. Anyway, Ari arrives. There are two other police men, and it's not just a job up there, it seems to be their lives, really. You don't really walk away, because what else is there to do up there? Short winter or short summers, long winters, darkness a lot of the time, constantly fighting the weather. Yet having said that, when certain things begin to happen, Ari's boss kind of says to him, listen, look, leave it be. Don't ask too many questions. We have to live here. It's a small community. If we rock the boat too much, well, we could suffer because of it. This book differs and is less laconic than The Mist, because it looks into different characters within that particular theatre group, because two things happen that link the theatre group to incidences within the actual town shortly after the Christmas when Ari arrives. The first one is that the aforementioned Hrolfr, the writer, is found after the theatre group have come together. They decide to take a break for lunch. They tend to go home for their lunch, and when they arrived back, they found him sprawled out on the ground at the end of a short stairs, maybe a 5 or 6 step stairs. Did he fall down the stairs? Did he not? There are questions there, and so this is why I say within the police there, the boss is kind of saying, don't ask too many questions. The man was in his mid-70s. He had a great life. He had very successful. Leave it be. And then about 2 days later, the wife of another member of the theatre group is found semi-naked within her actual garden, and she's found lying there. She isn't dead, but she's very, very much very close to it and has to be transferred to Reykjavik. And so lots of questions crop up. The pace of this is a lot slower. It's a lot more relaxed than The Mist. Ari drops around to different people's houses and chats that he has maybe in the cafe, or people, the actual police station there is almost like a social area. People dropping in constantly, not because they have whinges or complaints or there's issues, but just that they want to chat. It's almost like a talk shop, really. And it goes to show the isolation that these people had within their lives, as I'm sure they'd still have there, and I'm sure we would, if we were living up there, we'd probably be doing the exact same thing as them. And so slowly but surely this story evolves. I do think it gets kind of distracted a little bit by the backstories of other characters within the book itself. Could you leave some of it out? Possibly. And what we can see here is, when we moved on to the Mist, every word is important. Here, I feel, even though it's a shorter book, only 220 pages, that certain amount of it could be left out. And Ari pushes and questions, and bit by bit a story evolves, and we begin to see characters that we thought were X could be something different. And I don't want to give away any spoilers on this particular book. I've given you the background to it, and I definitely would recommend this book as well. I would think probably a 6 or 7 out of 10. Had I read this first, I'd have been very happy with it, but I have to say that The Mist is a super read, and it's a bigger book, but when I think back, I definitely took longer reading this one. Now again, the size of print is another thing. It's larger in this particular book, it's smaller in this, so maybe they're of a similar size overall. So look, a super writer. As I said, when I read The Mist, I went out and I bought 4 or 5 different books. I have some of them still in cold storage, excuse the pun, and I will be delving into them bit by bit in the next year or two, because I really look forward to them. Now, if you have read any of these books, or if you have read any other Ragnar Jonasson books, please put something in the description below, or I promote these particular vlogs on the Facebook pages. Please do put some notes on the Facebook pages as well, because many people did that after my last vlog. I really do appreciate it, and I try and respond to each and every single one of you. If you are looking for a book to read, a detective, whodunit, mystery, intrigue, I couldn't but recommend this particular writer. And certainly it's not an American or an English or a European. We're in a different country, and we get to learn a bit about that particular country as well. And certainly when you read books about Iceland, it's a place that you'd certainly love to visit, albeit maybe not in the depths of winter, and certainly not in the uplands of Iceland at that particular time. So now, thank you very much for joining me. If you liked what you saw, please give me a like. It helps develop the channel. And if you haven't subscribed, well, why not do so? Because I certainly intend to be bringing in 2023 an awful lot more book reviews, as well as photography stuff. And if you're into both, well, why not tune in for both? Thanks for joining me again. Talk to you soon. Take care.